Item number: SCP-Y-024. Object class: Keter. Special containment procedures. Due to the unpredictable migration patterns and expansive nature of SCP-Y-024, containment is currently unfeasible. Instead, efforts are focused on monitoring its movement and evacuating areas at risk of exposure. Mobile Task Force Zeta-0, Bad Bunch, is tasked with tracking SCP-Y-024 and coordinating with local research sites to implement immediate evacuation protocols. A 43-meter perimeter around SCP-Y-024 is to be established and maintained by unmanned aerial drones equipped with high-resolution cameras and atmospheric sensors. These drones are to relay real-time data to SCP-Y-1 for analysis and early warning purposes. Any attempts to collect samples or interact with SCP-Y-024 directly are strictly prohibited due to the nullification of wind and vacuum effects within its radius. Personnel encountering SCP-Y-024 must immediately withdraw to a safe distance and report their location. Any individuals exposed to SCP-Y-024 must be quarantined and monitored for signs of accelerated blood production. Immediate medical intervention is required for anyone exhibiting symptoms, although the prognosis is generally poor. Description: SCP-Y-024 is a large red fog capable of covering an area equivalent to a small town. It manifests within Provisional Reality-Y-1 and exhibits unpredictable migration patterns, making tracking and containment extremely challenging. Within a 43-meter radius of SCP-Y-024, all natural and unnatural wind or vacuum effects are nullified. This property makes it impossible to collect samples or affect the fog using conventional means. SCP-Y-024 is also capable of moving at speeds that make evasion nearly impossible for those caught in its path. Any living creature that enters SCP-Y-024 will begin to produce blood at an accelerated rate. This phenomenon starts with the visible swelling of veins and progresses to the leakage of blood from orifices. After approximately 4 hours of exposure, the affected individual's body will begin to expand due to the excessive blood production. This stage is accompanied by extreme pain. Roughly 3 hours later, the individual will burst, transforming into a cloud of red fog that integrates with SCP-Y-024. If a living creature exits SCP-Y-024 after partial exposure, the blood will be forcibly extracted from the last part of their body that made contact with the fog. This process results in the skin rupturing at the contact point, creating a severe and often fatal wound. Survival is possible only in cases of minimal exposure and immediate medical intervention, although such instances are exceedingly rare due to SCP-Y-024's rapid movement. Research File: Atmospheric Cancellation Effects of SCP-Y-024. Principal Investigator: Dr. Evelyn Harris, Atmospheric Sciences Department, Site-Y1. Date of initiation: 1st, 2000. Objective: to understand the mechanisms behind the nullification of natural and unnatural wind and vacuum effects within the 43-meter radius of SCP-Y-024. This study aims to identify the processes involved in this phenomenon and explore potential methods for mitigating or exploiting this effect. Introduction: SCP-Y-024 exhibits a unique and perplexing ability to cancel all wind and vacuum effects within a 43-meter radius. This nullification zone significantly hinders traditional and experimental containment efforts. The study seeks to elucidate the underlying mechanisms of this atmospheric cancellation to inform better containment strategies and expand the scientific understanding of anomalous atmospheric phenomena. Methodology: the study utilizes a combination of remote sensing technologies, unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, and advanced atmospheric modeling techniques to collect and analyze data. Key methods include remote sensing and UAV deployment, high-resolution cameras and atmospheric sensors mounted on UAVs to observe and record data within and around SCP-Y-024. Deployment of UAVs in a controlled manner to traverse the boundary of the nullification zone, capturing real-time data on air pressure, temperature, humidity, and particle composition. Atmospheric modeling. Development of computational models to simulate the nullification effect observed around SCP-Y-024. Integration of field data into models to test hypotheses regarding the mechanisms driving atmospheric cancellation. Experimental probes. Design and use of specialized probes capable of withstanding the nullification effect to gather direct measurements within the zone. Analysis of data from probes to identify changes in atmospheric variables and potential sources of the nullification effect. Findings: 1. Nullification zone. Dynamics. Initial UAV data indicated a sharp boundary at the 43-meter mark, where wind speeds dropped to 0. Further analysis revealed that this boundary fluctuates slightly, plus or minus 0.5 meters, in response to environmental changes, suggesting a dynamic equilibrium maintained by SCP-Y-024. 2. Particle interaction. Atmospheric sensors detected a high concentration of iron oxide particles within the nullification zone. These particles, suspended in a stable colloidal state, appear to interact with the air molecules, creating a dense medium that inhibits normal air movement. The exact nature of these interactions remains under investigation. 3. Electromagnetic interference. Data from specialized probes indicated the presence of an unusual electromagnetic field within the nullification zone. This field is hypothesized to interfere with the natural flow of air currents, contributing to the observed cancellation of wind effects. Attempts to disrupt this field using counteracting electromagnetic waves have so far been unsuccessful. 4. Thermodynamic anomalies. Temperature readings within the nullification zone showed minor but consistent deviations from external conditions. These deviations suggest an anomalous thermodynamic process at work, possibly related to the stabilization of the iron oxide colloid and the maintenance of the fog structure. 5. Pressure stabilization. Atmospheric pressure within the nullification zone remained remarkably stable despite external fluctuations. This stability is theorized to be a result of the interaction between the anomalous particles and the electromagnetic field, creating a self-regulating environment that negates external pressure changes. 6. Failed containment attempts. Several experimental approaches were tested to disrupt the nullification zone, including high-energy electromagnetic pulses, showed no effect on the stability of the nullification zone. Chemical dispersants failed to disperse the iron oxide colloid, likely due to its anomalous stabilization. Sonic disruption. High-frequency sound waves produced minimal impact on the atmospheric conditions within the zone. Theoretical framework. Based on the collected data and observed phenomena, the following theoretical framework has been proposed. 1. Colloidal stabilization. Hypothesis: the iron oxide particles within SCP-Y-024 are stabilized by an unknown anomalous process, likely involving the electromagnetic field detected within the zone. This stabilization creates a dense medium that inhibits normal air movement, resulting in the observed nullification of wind effects. 2. Electromagnetic field interference. The anomalous electromagnetic field within the nullification zone interferes with natural atmospheric dynamics. This interference may involve the manipulation of air molecules at a fundamental level, preventing the formation of wind currents and vacuum effects. 3. Self-regulating thermodynamics. The combination of stabilized colloid and electromagnetic interference creates a self-regulating thermodynamic environment. This environment maintains consistent atmospheric pressure and temperature within the nullification zone, contributing to the overall stability of SCP-Y-024. Conclusion: the study has provided valuable insights into the mechanisms behind the atmospheric cancellation effects of SCP-Y-024. While the exact processes remain incompletely understood, the data collected has informed the development of a theoretical framework that guides ongoing research efforts. Future studies will focus on further elucidating the role of the electromagnetic field and exploring advanced countermeasures to mitigate the nullification effect. Research Document Y-024-3A, Biological Impact of SCP-Y-024 on Human Subjects, Excess Blood Production Study. Date, 3rd, 2000. Lead Researcher, Dr. Marcus Bell. Subject, D-Class Subject, D-10423. Objective, to investigate the physiological effects of SCP-Y-024 on a human subject, specifically focusing on the anomalous excess blood production through the use of unmanned ground-based drones equipped with advanced scanning and monitoring capabilities. SCP-Y-024 exhibits a highly lethal and anomalous effect on living organisms that enter its fog-like presence, causing an accelerated production of blood within the subject's body. To gain a deeper understanding of this process, an experiment was conducted using D-Class personnel, with the subject being exposed to SCP-Y-024 under controlled conditions. The subject's physiological changes were monitored in real time using advanced drones equipped with bioscanners, infrared imaging, and remote blood analysis tools. D-Class Subject D-10423 was selected based on physical health, with no prior history of cardiovascular or hematological disorders. The subject was placed at the edge of SCP-Y-024's fog and instructed to walk slowly into the denser areas. 2 ground-based drones, designated UAV Gamma and UAV Delta, were deployed to maintain proximity and monitor the subject's vital signs, blood composition, and overall biological changes. Hour 0. Subject D-10423 enters the fog at 1400 hours. Drones activate scanning protocols, establishing a baseline of the subject's vital signs. Heart rate is at 72 BPM, blood pressure at 120/80 mmHg, millimeters of mercury, and no immediate changes in blood composition are detected. Subject reports an immediate sense of pressure, as though the atmosphere around him has thickened. The fog's color appears darker around the subject, almost pulsing in sync with his heartbeat. Hour 1. Initial signs of hematopoiesis. At 1500 hours, blood volume increases by approximately 10%. The subject's veins are visibly engorged, and drone sensors detect a rapid increase in red blood cell production, with bone marrow activity spiking to over 200% of normal levels. D-10423 complains of a deep throbbing pain in his limbs, describing it as if his bones are stretching from the inside out. Hour 2. By 1600 hours, the subject's blood begins to thicken. Blood viscosity increases by 35%, causing increased strain on the cardiovascular system. The heart rate spikes to 140 BPM, and the subject's blood pressure rises to 180/110 mmHg. Subject's skin takes on a reddish hue, and he begins sweating profusely. Breathing becomes labored, and the subject reports feeling heavy and bloated. Hour 3. At 1700 hours, abnormal vascular formations begin to appear on the subject's skin. Capillaries are observed forming just below the dermis, creating a web-like pattern across the entire body. These new blood vessels are fragile and prone to rupturing under minimal stress. Subject begins to panic, scratching at his skin as a sensation of crawling veins intensifies. Small ruptures appear, leading to minor external bleeding. Hour 4. By 1800 hours, blood production reaches critical levels. Blood volume has doubled, and the subject's skin appears stretched to its limit. The heart shows signs of hypertrophy, struggling to pump the thickened blood. Internal hemorrhaging is detected in the lungs and abdominal cavity. Subject experiences extreme pain, collapsing to the ground. Speech becomes incoherent, and drones detect increasing internal pressure as blood begins to leak from the eyes, nose, and mouth. Hour 5. At 1900 hours, drones detect a disturbing transformation. Blood cells exhibit signs of rapid mutation, with irregular cell structures forming in the bloodstream. These cells seem to bind together, creating gelatinous clots that block major arteries and veins. Subject is largely unresponsive, only able to emit low groans. Eyes are now entirely bloodshot, and severe bleeding occurs from all orifices. Drone imaging shows internal organs starting to distort under the pressure of the accumulating blood. Hour 6. At 2000 hours, decomposition begins while the subject is still alive. Tissue necrosis sets in, particularly in the extremities, where skin starts to slough off, revealing the engorged, blood-filled veins underneath. The subject's limbs begin to swell abnormally, resembling large blood-filled sacs. Subject briefly regains consciousness, screaming incoherently before succumbing to a state of shock. Drones detect the beginning of rapid internal decomposition. Hour 7. At 2100 hours, the subject's body reaches its breaking point. The immense internal pressure causes the subject to rupture violently. The drones capture the event in real time. The subject explodes into a dense red mist, his body disintegrating into the surrounding fog. The red mist rapidly merges with SCP-Y-024, which visibly expands and darkens upon absorbing the new matter. Residual analysis. Post-event, UAV Gamma and UAV Delta detect a significant increase in SCP-Y-024's density and size, correlating with the absorbed biological matter. The drone's atmospheric sensors record a brief spike in anomalous energy readings, suggesting that SCP-Y-024 gains mass and energy from absorbed lifeforms. SCP-Y-024, the red fog anomaly within Provisional Reality-Y-1, has been noted for its severe physical effects on those who enter its mist, most notably excessive blood production, leading to fatal rupture. However, recent tests have revealed that SCP-Y-024 also exerts profound psychological effects, manifesting as intense hallucinations of humanoid figures that are consistent across multiple subjects. This study aims to document and analyze these hallucinatory experiences, with particular attention to their shared characteristics and cultural significance. 3 D-class personnel were selected for this study based on their lack of pre-existing psychological conditions and their differing cultural backgrounds to assess any potential influence of personal or cultural beliefs on the hallucinations. Each subject was exposed to SCP-Y-024 within a controlled environment, monitored by remote observation drones and equipped with biofeedback sensors to record physiological and psychological responses. Findings: D-Class Subject D-13741. Exposure duration: 3 hours, presumably 4 more hours post-test. Hallucinations: reported. Subject D-1374. 1 reported seeing shadowy figures within the fog approximately 20 minutes after initial exposure. The figures appeared in his peripheral vision, only fully visible when he turned his head quickly. Subject described the figures as tall, emaciated men wearing old, ragged clothes and adorned with golden necklaces and large feathered hats. The figures were observed to be dancing or swaying in a manner the subject likened to a ritualistic dance. D-13741 expressed increasing anxiety as the figures seemed to close in on him. He attempted to communicate with them but received no response. Subject became agitated, insisting that the figures were watching and judging him. After the experiment, the subject was visibly shaken and refused to discuss further with researcher personnel, removing his communication device. D-13741 was later found deceased, a pile of flesh and bones left behind in the aftermath of SCP-Y-024. D-Class Subject D-20533. Exposure duration: 10 hours. Hallucinations: Subject D-20533 began reporting hallucinations 30 minutes into exposure. Unlike D-13741, D-20533 was able to see the figures more clearly and described them as ancient priests performing a ritual. The figures were described as giant, gaunt men, their skin a grayish hue. They wore tattered tribal garments and intricate gold jewelry, with large ornate headdresses decorated with vibrant feathers. The subject claimed the figures' faces were obscured, like shadows were covering them, but the eyes glowed faintly. D-20533 appeared mesmerized by the figures, watching them intently as they danced. The subject described a feeling of being drawn into the dance, compelled to move along with them, but physically unable to do so. The subject's heart rate and blood pressure spiked during these episodes, and he reported hearing a low, droning chant that grew louder the longer he remained in the mist. D-20533 became unresponsive after the 8-hour period, with the occasional grunt or gurgle as he attempted to dance with the strange figures. At roughly 10 hours into the test, there was a disturbing wet splatter sound, presumably the bursting point in which D-20533's body ruptured from the excess blood production. D-Class Subject D-21947. Exposure duration 7 hours, hallucinations. Reported subject D-21947 began experiencing hallucinations within 15 minutes of exposure, the earliest onset recorded among the subjects. The subject noted that growing up in the Honduras, he had heard tales of the men in the hallucinations, immediately identifying the figures as our kin, referring to the ancient Mayan priests known for leading sacrificial rituals. D-21947 provided the most detailed description, identifying the figures as tall and skeletal, with dark skin stretched tight over their bones. They wore elaborate gold ornaments and massive feathered headdresses, with intricate designs that the subject recognized as Mayan in origin. Although D-21947 had surprisingly extensive knowledge of the Mayan cultures, he explained that the adornments worn by the Akin were not tied to any gods or practices that he knew of. The subject reported that the figures were dancing in circles, performing a ritual he claimed was intended to appease the gods. D-21947 displayed signs of extreme distress, particularly when the figures appeared to approach him. He became increasingly paranoid, convinced that the figures were preparing him as a sacrificial offering. Subject pleaded to be removed from the fog, claiming that the figures were speaking to him in a language he didn't understand, but could somehow interpret as a command to join them. At the 6-hour point, D-21947 ran from the hallucinations against the Foundation's orders. After running for almost a full hour, his excessive bloating from the blood production was causing him excruciating pain. The recording device on his suit picked up the sound of D-21947 tripping, followed by a repulsive splattering sound. The hallucinations experienced by these 3 D-Class subjects share several key characteristics. Despite variations in personal interpretation, all subjects reported seeing tall, emaciated humanoid figures with a distinct tribal appearance, including tattered clothing, gold jewelry, and elaborate feathered headdresses. The figures consistently appeared to be engaged in a ritualistic dance, which the subjects perceived as ominous or threatening. After dozens of subsequent tests, we have arrived at the conclusion that roughly 1 in 3 participants experience the Akin hallucinations, while the other 2/3 appear to mostly experience occasional auditory and minor peripheral hallucinations. Conclusion: the hallucinations induced by SCP-Y-024 present a disturbing aspect of its overall anomalous effect. The consistency in the descriptions of the figures, along with the cultural significance noted by subject D-21947, suggests that SCP-Y-024 may be tapping into deep psychological or even collective unconscious elements to generate these visions. Further research is necessary to determine whether these hallucinations are purely psychological or if they indicate a deeper, more insidious form of interaction with SCP-Y-024. Given the profound psychological distress caused by these hallucinations, continued exposure to SCP-Y-024 poses significant risks not only to the physical well-being of subjects, but also to their mental stability. Future studies will explore the potential connections between the hallucinations and SCP-Y-024's broader effects, as well as the possible use of cultural background as a predictive factor for the nature of these experiences. Research document Y-0247C, Migration Patterns and Behavioral Analysis of SCP-Y-024. Date: 8th, 2000. Lead researcher, Dr. Maxwell Chen. Subject: SCP-Y-024. Objective: to study and analyze the migration patterns of SCP-Y-024 within Provisional Reality-Y-1, with a focus on identifying any correlations between its movement and external factors, particularly the lunar cycle in baseline reality. Introduction. SCP-Y-024 has displayed unpredictable migration patterns, making it difficult to predict and contain. Initial studies suggested that SCP-Y-024's movements were random, but subsequent analysis has revealed a possible correlation between its behavior and the lunar cycle observed in baseline reality. This document outlines the findings of an extensive study aimed at understanding SCP-Y-024's migration patterns, its behavioral changes, and the potential influence of the lunar cycle on its activities. Over a 6-month period, SCP-Y-024's movements were tracked using a combination of unmanned aerial and ground-based drones equipped with atmospheric sensors, GPS mapping, and environmental analysis tools. Data were cross-referenced with the lunar cycle in baseline reality, as well as various environmental factors within Provisional Reality-Y-1. The study also involved monitoring SCP-Y-024's interactions with its surroundings, including any changes in its size, density, and behavior. Special attention was given to periods surrounding the new moon and full moon phases, as these seemed to correspond with significant changes in SCP-Y-024's activity. Findings are 1. Irregular migration patterns. SCP-Y-024's migration across Reality-Y-1 appears erratic, with no discernible geographic or topographic preferences. It traverses various terrains, urban ruins, forested areas, and open plains, without any apparent logic or pattern. However, when SCP-Y-024's movements were analyzed in relation to the lunar cycle, a distinct behavioral pattern emerged. 2. Behavioral correlation with lunar cycle, full moon phase. During the full moon phase, SCP-Y-024 exhibited a relatively passive behavior. It moved slowly, often lingering in one area for extended periods. The fog's size remained consistent, and its interaction with the environment was minimal. No aggressive behavior or active pursuit of organic entities was observed. This phase was marked by what could be described as a resting state for SCP-Y-024. Waning moon phase. As the moon transitioned from full to new, SCP-Y-024's activity began to increase. The fog's movement became more deliberate, covering greater distances within shorter periods. SCP-Y-024's size fluctuated slightly, expanding and contracting in seemingly random intervals. During this phase, there were sporadic reports of SCP-Y-024 pursuing small animals or stationary objects, though it did not exhibit outright aggression. New moon phase. The new moon phase marked a significant shift in SCP-Y-024's behavior. The fog became highly aggressive, moving at speeds not observed during other phases. SCP-Y-024 actively sought out organic entities within Provisional Reality-Y-1, displaying a predatory nature. Drones captured footage of SCP-Y-024 changing direction to intercept animals, and even D-Class personnel left in designated observation zones. During the new moon, SCP-Y-024's size increased by approximately 15%, and its density intensified, creating a darker, more opaque fog. This phase was also characterized by sudden, sharp fluctuations in its shape, suggesting a more chaotic and erratic internal structure. SCP-Y-024's behavior during this phase could be likened to a hunting predator, seeking out and engulfing any living organisms it encountered. Waxing moon phase. Following the new moon, SCP-Y-024's aggression gradually subsided. Its movements slowed, and it resumed a more passive, exploratory behavior. The fog's size returned to baseline levels, and its density decreased. During this phase, SCP-Y-024 seemed to retract, as if recovering from the intense activity of the new moon phase. Interestingly, the moon within Provisional Reality-Y-1 cannot be tracked or observed in a manner consistent with baseline reality. Attempts to locate the moon or track its phases have failed, leading to the conclusion that the lunar cycle's influence on SCP-Y-024 is tied to the Moon's phase in baseline reality, rather than its manifestation within Provisional Reality-Y-1. SCP-Y-024's size and density were noted to fluctuate in tandem with its behavioral shifts. During the waxing and waning phases, these fluctuations were subtle, likely in response to environmental factors or internal changes. However, the most significant changes occurred during the new moon phase, where SCP-Y-024 expanded rapidly, increasing in both size and opacity. This correlation between size, density, and aggression suggests that SCP-Y-024 undergoes a form of growth or empowerment during the new moon, possibly linked to an underlying anomalous energy cycle. Analysis. The correlation between SCP-Y-024's migration patterns and the lunar cycle suggests that its behavior is not random, but rather driven by an external influence. The most plausible explanation is that SCP-Y-024 is affected by the lunar phases of baseline reality, with its aggression peaking during the new moon and diminishing during the full moon. This behavioral pattern mirrors the natural cycles of some predatory animals, which are known to exhibit heightened activity during periods of darkness or lower light levels. The inability to track the moon within Provisional Reality-Y-1 adds a layer of complexity to this phenomenon. It is possible that SCP-Y-024 is linked to a non-visible or non-physical manifestation of the moon, existing in a state that interacts with SCP-Y-024 on an anomalous level. This could involve energy cycles, gravitational influences, or other unknown factors that affect SCP-Y-024's internal structure and behavior. Understanding SCP-Y-024's behavioral patterns in relation to the lunar cycle provides a potential framework for predicting its movements and aggression levels. By monitoring the lunar phases in baseline reality, it may be possible to anticipate SCP-Y-024's periods of heightened activity and implement preemptive measures to minimize the risk to personnel and the surrounding environment. However, the unpredictable nature of Provisional Reality-Y-1, combined with SCP-Y-024's erratic behavior, means that these predictions are not foolproof. The potential for sudden, unanticipated changes remains high, necessitating continued vigilance and adaptation of monitoring strategies. Researcher notes, additional resources have been allocated to study the potential energy or gravitational influences during the new moon phase, which may provide insights into the anomalous behaviors observed. A proposal for the deployment of specialized drones capable of detecting non-visible electromagnetic or gravitational anomalies within SCP-Y-024's vicinity is under review. Personnel are reminded that interactions with SCP-Y-024 during the new moon phase are strictly prohibited without explicit authorization from Site Command. Research Document Y-0248-A. Containment Attempts and Classification of SCP-Y-024 as Uncontainable. Date: 9th, 2000. Lead Researcher, Dr. Emilia Hart. Subject: SCP-Y-024. Objective: to document and analyze the various containment strategies attempted for SCP-Y-024, the reasons for their failure, and the final classification of SCP-Y-024 as uncontainable. Introduction. SCP-Y-024 has proven to be a significant challenge for the SCP Foundation. Its unpredictable migration patterns, the nullification of environmental effects within its vicinity, and its lethal effects on living organisms have rendered conventional containment methods ineffective. This document provides a comprehensive review of all containment attempts, the underlying rationale for each strategy, and the reasons for their eventual failure, leading to SCP-Y-024's classification as uncontainable. Containment Attempt Number 1. Standard Containment Protocols. Initial Contact Date: 12th, 2000. Method: a 50-meter containment perimeter was established using reinforced steel barriers and containment personnel stationed around the area. High-powered fans were deployed at strategic points around the perimeter to create a wind current intended to push SCP-Y-024 away from populated areas. Containment teams were equipped with airtight suits and respirators to prevent exposure to SCP-Y-024's effects. Outcome: SCP-Y-024 nullified all wind effects within its 43-meter radius, rendering the high-powered fans ineffective. The steel barriers failed to stop SCP-Y-024's migration, as it simply flowed over and around them, moving through the perimeter without resistance. Personnel stationed around the perimeter reported swelling veins and increased blood pressure within hours of SCP-Y-024's approach, forcing an emergency evacuation. Many team members who were unable to evacuate in time were consumed by SCP-Y-024, leading to their transformation into part of the fog. Fatalities 49. Analysis: SCP-Y-024's ability to negate environmental effects and its disregard for physical barriers made standard containment protocols ineffective. The fog's movement and expansion were unhindered by any physical constructs or wind-based deterrents. This initial failure highlighted the need for more advanced adaptive containment measures. Containment Attempt Number 2. Electromagnetic Field Barriers. Date: 15th, 2000. Method: electromagnetic field generators were placed around SCP-Y-024's observed perimeter to create a containment field designed to repel or contain the fog within a designated area. The field was calibrated to interfere with the electromagnetic properties detected within SCP-Y-024 with the aim of neutralizing its ability to nullify environmental effects. Drones equipped with electromagnetic sensors were deployed to monitor SCP-Y-024's response to the containment field. Outcome: upon activation, the electromagnetic field initially appeared to slow SCP-Y-024's movement, leading to optimism among the research team. However, SCP-Y-024 quickly adapted, with the fog's density increasing dramatically. The increased density caused the electromagnetic field to destabilize and eventually fail. SCP-Y-024 then expanded beyond its initial perimeter, engulfing 2 of the field generators and rendering them inoperable. Attempts to re-establish the field were unsuccessful. Fatalities 2. Analysis: SCP-Y-024's rapid adaptation to the electromagnetic field suggested an inherent resistance to such containment strategies. The fog's ability to increase in density and overwhelm the field generators indicated that its anomalous properties are more complex than initially understood, potentially involving an unknown energy source or anomalous mechanism beyond electromagnetic interaction. Containment Attempt Number 3. Atmospheric Containment Dome. Date: 2nd, 2000. Method: an atmospheric containment dome was constructed over SCP-Y-024's observed location using a transparent, flexible polymer designed to create an airtight seal. The dome was equipped with air filtration and circulation systems to prevent the buildup of hazardous gases and to attempt to isolate SCP-Y-024 from external influences. The goal was to contain SCP-Y-024 within the dome and study its behavior in a controlled environment. Outcome: initial deployment of the dome was successful, and SCP-Y-024 was fully enclosed within the structure. However, within hours, SCP-Y-024's nullification effects caused the air filtration and circulation systems to fail. The atmosphere inside the dome became stagnant, and the pressure differential led to structural stress on the dome. SCP-Y-024 then began to exert pressure against the dome walls, eventually causing them to rupture. The fog expanded rapidly, escaping containment and rendering the dome ineffective. Attempts to repair the dome and reseal SCP-Y-024 were unsuccessful, and the fog continued its migration. Fatalities 16. Analysis: the failure of the atmospheric containment dome highlighted SCP-Y-024's ability to exert force and pressure against physical barriers, even when isolated from external environmental factors. The fog's influence over the atmosphere within the dome also indicated that SCP-Y-024 is capable of manipulating air pressure and density within its vicinity, further complicating containment efforts. Containment Attempt Number 5, Reality Anchor Deployment. Date: 28th, 2000. Method: Scranton Reality Anchors, SRAs, were deployed around SCP-Y-024's perimeter to stabilize the local reality and counteract the fog's anomalous properties. The SRAs were intended to neutralize SCP-Y-024's nullification effects and prevent its expansion by anchoring it to a fixed location within Provisional Reality-Y-1. Monitoring equipment was set up to detect changes in SCP-Y-024's behavior and the effectiveness of the SRAs in containing it. Outcome: upon activation, the SRAs initially appeared to stabilize the area, with SCP-Y-024 showing a decrease in movement and density. However, within a short period, SCP-Y-024 began to emit low-frequency vibrations that disrupted the SRA's functionality. These vibrations caused the anchors to malfunction and lose synchronization, leading to a cascade failure. SCP-Y-024 resumed its migration, and several SRAs were consumed by the fog, which caused them to exhibit anomalous behavior and cease functioning entirely. Fatalities. 3. Analysis. The failure of the SRAs suggested that SCP-Y-024 possesses a reality warping capability that can interfere with even the most advanced reality stabilization technologies. The fog's ability to generate disruptive vibrations indicates a potential defensive mechanism against containment efforts, further complicating its containment. Containment Attempt Number 5, Thermal Containment. Date: 29th, 2000. Method: a series of high-intensity thermal emitters were deployed around SCP-Y-024's perimeter, designed to increase the temperature within the containment zone to extreme levels. The goal was to test whether SCP-Y-024 could be dispersed or neutralized by intense heat, which would evaporate or destabilize its structure. Drones equipped with infrared sensors were deployed to monitor temperature levels and SCP-Y-024's response. Outcome: the thermal emitters successfully raised the temperature within SCP-Y-024's containment zone to over 1,000 degrees Celsius. Despite the extreme heat, SCP-Y-024 showed no signs of dispersal or destabilization. The fog's density remained constant, and its movement was unaffected by the temperature increase. After several hours of continuous operation, the thermal emitters began to overheat and fail. SCP-Y-024 then expanded, engulfing the emitters and causing them to melt and cease functioning. Fatalities: 0. Analysis. The failure of the thermal containment strategy confirmed that SCP-Y-024 is resistant to extreme heat and cannot be neutralized through thermal methods. The fog's composition and structure appear to be immune to temperature changes, indicating that its anomalous properties are not based on conventional physical principles. Final Containment Attempt: Provisional Reality-Y-1 Isolation. Date: 1st, 2000. Method: the final containment strategy involved attempting to isolate SCP-Y-024 within Provisional Reality-Y-1 by creating a dimensional barrier to prevent its escape into baseline reality. A team of researchers, specialized Zeta-0 members, and reality engineers worked to establish a stable dimensional boundary around SCP-Y-024's observed perimeter using advanced reality manipulation technology and dimensional anchors. The goal was to contain SCP-Y-024 within Provisional Reality-Y-1 permanently, preventing it from posing a threat to baseline reality. Outcome: initial deployment of the dimensional boundary was successful, with SCP-Y-024 contained within the established perimeter. However, within days, SCP-Y-024 began to exert pressure against the dimensional boundary, causing localized reality distortions and fluctuations. The damages dealt to the dimensional boundary were reflected onto Zeta-0 operative Pocket Sand, a Bad Bunch member who acted as a primary function of the dimensional boundary due to his anomalous abilities. These distortions led to a destabilization of the dimensional anchors, resulting in the collapse of the boundary, simultaneously causing operative pocket sand to instantaneously explode from excess blood production. SCP-Y-024 resumed its migration within Provisional Reality-Y-1, and the containment strategy was deemed a failure. Fatalities. 1. Analysis. The collapse of the dimensional boundary highlighted SCP-Y-024's capacity to influence and distort reality itself, making it resistant to even the most advanced containment technologies. This incident also showed that SCP-Y-024's effects can be produced even if the subject makes contact with it in any sense, dimensional, physical, or otherwise, as shown through the side effects induced in the now-deceased Zeta-0 operative, Pocket Sand. The failure of this final attempt led to the conclusion that SCP-Y-024 cannot be contained within any known framework or reality. Conclusion. After multiple containment attempts utilizing a wide range of advanced technologies and strategies, SCP-Y-024 has been classified as uncontainable. Its ability to adapt to and overcome containment measures, coupled with its reality-warping properties and resistance to environmental changes, makes it an exceptionally dangerous anomaly. Researcher notes, the decision to classify SCP-Y-024 as uncontainable does not signify an end to research efforts. On the contrary, this classification underscores the importance of developing new strategies and technologies to address threats that defy conventional containment. All personnel are advised to avoid direct interaction with SCP-Y-024 and to prioritize safety and reporting over engagement. The anomaly's unpredictable nature makes it one of the most hazardous entities currently under the Foundation's observation. Incident Report Y-024-7, first functional recovered audio file of Y-024 victim. Subject, Researcher Dr. Marcus Hale. Date, 31st, 2000. Dr. Hale was performing analysis on local fauna within Provisional Reality-Y-1 and documenting his findings when SCP-Y-024 quickly overtook the environment during a migration period. Duration, 10 hours. Begin log. Hour 1.
This is Dr. Marcus Hale, commencing sample collection from the anomalous flora designated as PRY-12. The specimen appears to exhibit bioluminescence and limited motility, likely influenced by the unique conditions of Provisional Reality-Y-1. Initial observations suggest adaptive traits for nutrient acquisition in low-light environments. Soil and air samples will be collected in parallel.
Hour 2.
Samples from PRY-12 are being stored in containment jars. The soil here is rich in unknown compounds, possibly explaining the plant's unique properties. Air sample analysis indicates high level of particulate matter, possibly from the bioluminescent spores. Proceeding to catalog findings and continue observations. Collected several floral samples. The mobility mechanism seems to involve microfibers that contract and expand, allowing the plant to inch along the ground. Remarkable adaptability. Noticed a shift in ambient temperature. A red fog's rolling in. Adjusting protocols, preparing for containment. Will continue logging hourly.
Hour 3.
The fog has completely enveloped the area. My suit sensors confirm it's SCP-Y-24. Experiencing minor visibility issues, but suit integrity remains intact. My veins feel strange. Slight swelling? Documenting this for analysis. We'll continue sample collection. Perhaps proximity data can aid in understanding Y-24's mechanisms.
Hour 5.
Swelling in my veins has increased. It's becoming uncomfortable, but I can still function. The suit's internal pressure is compensating somewhat, but the fog's effects are undeniable. I'm storing additional samples and making detailed notes. If these logs survive, they could be crucial in developing countermeasures.
Hour 6.
It's getting worse. The swelling is starting to hurt. Blood is leaking from my nose and eyes, but I'm managing to keep my focus. This might be my last chance to gather meaningful data. If anyone is listening, Please, make sure this information is used to protect others. Continuing observations.
Hour 7.
Pain is intense. Body feels like it's under immense pressure. More blood leakage. My suit systems are struggling to compensate. If only I had more time, maybe I could find a way out. To my colleagues, stay safe. Avoid SCP-Y-024 at all costs. Continuing to document changes.
Hour 8.
It's unbearable. Body is expanding. I can feel blood pumping furiously. Pain is indescribable. Collecting any remaining samples and data. My vision is blurring, but I must keep going. Maybe these findings can help anyone. Please.
Hour 9.
Could barely speak. Body's on the brink. I could feel it about to burst. Please, whoever finds this, use this data. Save others. My fate is sealed, but you could still fight this. Please, don't let my death be in vain.
Hour 10.
Final log speaks. Could hardly talk. The pain is overwhelming. My last hope, my friends, colleagues, stay safe. Use findings. Prevent this for all of us.
One week after the incident, Dr. Marcus Hale's suit was recovered, but his body was not found. Before Dr. Hale ruptured, he had activated the emergency marine travel utility on his multifunction suit provided to those within Provisional Reality-Y-1, sealing the suit airtight. Without having the intended oxygen tank apparatus on his suit, this means that Hale had likely suffocated before the rupture, but this action caused the blood mist from his rupture to stay within the airtight suit. This is currently the only sample of SCP-Y-024 we have, as attempts to simulate Dr. Hale's actions with D-Class personnel have proved fruitless, causing the suits to rupture along with the subject. His data and samples are now under analysis for developing effective countermeasures against SCP-Y-024. Exploration Log Y-024EX-07. Date: 11th, 2000. Location: Provisional Reality-Y-1. Site: Y1. Exploration Team: Unmanned Ground-Based RC Drone. Designation: DRNY-024-07. Objective: conduct a detailed exploration of the small town enveloped by SCP-Y-024's red mist during its relaxed behavioral cycle. Begin log. Initiation of expedition, 12 p.m. The operation commenced under strict observation in the Site Y1 control room. The team, consisting of researcher Dr. Amelia Hart and several other Foundation personnel, initiated the launch sequence for DRNY-024-07, which shall be referred to simply as RC-7, a high-tech remote-controlled drone specifically designed to resist the electromagnetic frequencies emitted by SCP-Y-024. The drone was equipped with advanced sensors, high-resolution cameras, infrared imaging, and audio recording devices. As RC-7 passed through the security barrier, separating the safe zone from the mist-covered area, its camera feeds were relayed directly to the control room monitors. The red fog thickened as the drone advanced, reducing visibility to mere meters. Despite this, the drone's sensors remained operational, cutting through the dense mist with precision. 12:10 p.m. The drone arrived at the outskirts of the small town within Provisional Reality-Y-1, a location once inhabited but now abandoned. The structures were weathered and decayed, with plant life creeping up the sides of buildings, although most of the flora appeared unnaturally red or black in color, likely due to the fog's influence. The town had an eerie stillness. No movement was detected by the drone's sensors, and the mist seemed to wrap around the buildings, creating a suffocating atmosphere. RC-7 began systematically scanning the area, its cameras capturing the desolate environment. The team noted the distinct lack of sound, no wind, no animal noises, just the faint hum of the drone's engines. 12:25 p.m. As RC-7 proceeded deeper into the town, it approached a row of abandoned houses. One of these houses drew particular interest due to a strange anomaly detected by the drone's sensors. The windows of the house, though cracked and grimy, were producing an unusual condensation. Upon closer inspection, the drone's high-resolution camera revealed that the condensation was not water, but a thick, viscous substance that bore a strong resemblance to blood. The drone was instructed to move closer and focus on the window. The substance slowly formed droplets, running down the glass in a disturbingly deliberate manner. However, before the droplets could reach the windowsill, they began to evaporate into the air, merging seamlessly with the surrounding red mist. The team observed this process in silence, the phenomenon both fascinating and unnerving. 12:40 p.m. Having documented the bizarre blood condensation, RC-7 was directed to continue its exploration. The drone navigated through narrow alleyways, passing between dilapidated buildings. The architecture of the town seemed to belong to multiple eras, with modern structures intermingled with those that appeared much older, almost ancient. 1 p.m. As the drone approached the town square, its audio sensors began picking up a faint rhythmic sound at an extremely low frequency. Initially, the sound was barely audible, but it quickly became apparent that it was not a random noise. The sound was rhythmic, resembling a drum beat. The researchers in the control room listened intently as the audio feed was amplified. Upon amplification, the low-frequency sound became clearer. It was unmistakably a rhythmic, tribal drum beat, slow and deliberate, echoing through the otherwise silent town. The researchers exchanged uneasy glances, aware that such an occurrence had not been documented during previous explorations. 1:15 p.m. Intrigued and unsettled, the team decided to follow the direction from which the sound seemed to be emanating. The drone's sensors picked up the drumbeat's increasing intensity as it advanced toward the center of the town. With every meter traveled, the beat grew louder, more insistent, almost as if it were guiding the drone deeper into SCP-Y-024's domain. 1:30 p.m. As RC-7 moved closer to the source of the sound, the drone's infrared sensors detected faint heat signatures in the shape of tall, thin humanoid forms. These figures moved rhythmically, in perfect synchrony with the drum beats. The infrared images were unclear, but the forms appeared to be dancing, swaying as if in a ritual. These humanoids were wearing tattered tribal clothing, adorned with gold jewelry that seemed to shimmer even in the infrared spectrum. Their heads were crowned with intricate ornate headdresses, decorated with feathers and what appeared to be bone. The figures, though ghostly in appearance, seemed almost lifelike in their movements. 1:40 p.m. The researchers in the control room were taken aback. These figures bore a strong resemblance to the Arkin, described by a D-class subject during a previous experiment. The implication that these entities might be manifesting within SCP-Y-024 was deeply unsettling. The drone was ordered to maintain a safe distance while continuing to monitor the entities. As it did, the Arkin appeared to notice the drone. Their movements shifted slightly, still in rhythm with the drumbeat, but now they began gesturing with their elongated arms, pointing towards the center of the town, the direction the drone was already heading. 1:55 p.m. With growing apprehension, the team decided to follow the direction indicated by the entities. As RC-7 advanced, the drumbeat grew louder, almost deafening, reverberating through the control room speakers to the point of discomfort. The researchers had to reduce the volume to continue operating the drone. The humanoid figures, now almost fully visible on the infrared sensors, continued to dance, their movements becoming more intense as the drone moved closer to the town's center. The team noted that the figures seemed to be both leading and observing the drone, their gestures growing more insistent as the journey continued. 2:10 p.m. As RC-7 reached the very heart of the town, the drone's cameras revealed a sight that had not been encountered in any previous exploration. At the center of the town square was a massive, swirling hole in the ground, at least 15 meters in diameter. The hole was not a simple depression or sinkhole, it was an active vortex, spinning with terrifying speed. What made this vortex truly horrifying was the substance it was composed of. The swirling mass was made entirely of blood, dark and viscous, drawn from the red mist surrounding it. The blood seemed to materialize out of thin air, coalescing into streams that were pulled into the vortex with increasing intensity. As the blood swirled, it created a sickening gurgling sound that mixed with the ever-present drumbeat. 2:20 p.m. The researchers in the control room were stunned. Such a phenomenon had never been documented in SCP-Y-024's previous activity. The swirling pit of blood was both mesmerizing and deeply disturbing, a manifestation of SCP-Y-024's anomalous properties at their most extreme. Despite the overwhelming sense of dread, the team decided to take advantage of the opportunity to gather more data. RC-7 was ordered to approach the edge of the vortex cautiously. The drone's sensors recorded the immense gravitational pull exerted by the swirling mass, strong enough to distort the air around it. 2:30 p.m. As the drone reached the edge of the vortex, the Arkin figures became increasingly agitated. Their dancing grew frantic, their gestures wild and erratic. The drumbeat reached an almost unbearable volume, pulsating through the control room with a rhythm that seemed to shake the very walls. With a deep breath, Dr. Hart gave the order. The drone was to descend into the vortex. 2:35 p.m. The drone's descent was slow and deliberate, its cameras and sensors working overtime to capture every detail. As RC-7 entered the swirling mass, the blood seemed to cling to its frame, obscuring the cameras and distorting the video feed. For a few moments, the feed was nothing but a chaotic swirl of red. Then suddenly, everything went dark. The connection with RC-7 was lost. 4:35 p.m. After 2 hours of silence, RC-7's signal was unexpectedly restored. The control room monitors flickered back to life, displaying a black screen with faint, intermittent static. The team quickly scrambled to regain full control of the drone, but the video feed remained mostly dark, with only brief flashes of indistinct imagery. What little data could be retrieved from the drone's logs indicated that it had continued descending into the vortex for several minutes before encountering an anomalous interference that disrupted all systems. Despite this, the drone's audio recording device captured a final brief sound before going offline once more. A distant, echoing voice, speaking in a language that has yet to be identified, followed by a single loud drum beat. The feed was abruptly cut shortly after. Exploration Log Y-024-B, RC-7 Reconnaissance, Part 2, Date. Location, Provisional Reality-Y-1, Expedition Team, RC Unit, RC-7. Status, Reconnaissance resumed. 12:07 p.m. 5 days after its abrupt loss of signal, RC-7 unexpectedly reactivated, sending a live video feed back to the Mobile Research Unit Theta 12, the operators of RC-7. The researchers, taken by surprise, scrambled to their stations, hurriedly pulling up the feed and running diagnostic tests. The drone systems appeared fully functional, yet what it displayed on the screen was far from reassuring. The video feed revealed an unsettling environment, a vast, dilapidated facility bathed in dark, coagulated blood. Every surface, walls, ceiling, and floor, was drenched in the substance, which dripped continuously in slow, rhythmic patterns. Yet, despite the drone's fully operational audio systems, the environment was entirely silent. No sound accompanied the dripping blood, nor was there any ambient noise typical of such an environment. Repeated diagnostics confirmed that this was not a malfunction. The facility itself was enveloped in an unnatural, oppressive silence. 12:15 p.m. The drone's camera panned slowly, revealing more of the eerie surroundings. The blood, although thick and viscous, behaved unnervingly, sliding down the walls in slow, deliberate streams before vanishing as it touched the ground. The evaporation left no trace, adding to the mystery of this sinister place. The drone's operators, their hands hovering over the controls, watched the feed with growing unease. As RC-7 advanced deeper into the facility, strange symbols began to appear on the blood-soaked walls. These symbols, composed of twisted, alien shapes, glowed faintly through the layers of blood. The researchers tried to make sense of them, but their shifting nature made it impossible to decipher. Beneath each symbol, however, was a single word, written in the English alphabet: Canon. The word's repeated appearance throughout the facility suggested it held significant, possibly ominous meaning, though its exact nature remained unknown. 12:24 p.m. The drone continued to navigate through the labyrinth of corridors, each turn revealing more of the same unsettling silence and blood-slicked surfaces. The operators guided the drone cautiously, noting every detail for later analysis. The environment felt increasingly claustrophobic, with the blood-slicked walls seemingly closing in as the drone moved forward. 12:31 p.m. Suddenly, a violent disruption broke the monotonous silence. A rusted pipe embedded in the ceiling burst open without warning, releasing a torrent of thick, sludge-like blood. The drone's camera was momentarily obscured as the viscous fluid splattered across its lens. The operators quickly activated the drone's cleaning mechanism, shaking off the congealed blood and restoring visibility to the feed. The corridor ahead was now flooded with the grotesque fluid, which began to evaporate almost immediately, leaving the passageway eerily dry once more. 12:38 p.m. The drone pressed on, its operators maintaining a tense focus on the feed. As RC-7 continued, the corridor narrowed, leading to a large, rusted metal door, an elevator, its surface corroded and marked with more of the glowing symbols. Above the door, the word Canon was etched, its letters pulsating faintly in the blood-red gloom. The researchers exchanged uneasy glances, but decided to proceed. One of them directed the drone to extend its mechanical arm, cautiously pressing the open button on the elevator's control panel. The doors groaned and creaked as they slowly parted, revealing not the expected interior, but a massive wave of dark, congealed blood. The liquid surged forward, flooding the corridor in complete silence. The drone's stabilizers engaged as the operators kept it anchored amidst the rushing fluid. 12:44 p.m. One of the researchers nervously jests at their circumstances and its similarity to the movie The Shining, promptly being reprimanded by the other researchers. 12:46 p.m. With the corridor now submerged in ankle-deep blood, the drone advanced into the elevator. The interior was as blood-soaked as the rest of the facility, with more of the enigmatic symbols etched into the walls. The researchers, now deeply unsettled, instructed the drone to extend its mechanical arm once more. This time, they pressed one of the two buttons on the control panel. Up and down. The up button yielded no response, so the drone pressed the down button instead. 12:50 p.m. After the down button was pressed on the elevator panel, RC-7 began its descent into the unknown depths of the blood-soaked facility. Suddenly, the video feed from the drone flickered, distorting with lines of static. The researchers, watching intently, noticed a strange, almost imperceptible voice emanating from the drone's audio system. The voice was faint, unintelligible, and sounded as if someone or something was whispering directly into the microphone. The words were too garbled to be understood, their meaning lost in the crackle of the static. Just as quickly as it had appeared, the disturbance subsided, leaving behind only the disconcerting silence. 12:54 p.m. The elevator came to an abrupt halt, causing a brief moment of tension among the research team. The silence, once again, pressed down on the room as the drone's audio picked up nothing but the unsettling absence of sound. The elevator doors creaked open slowly, revealing a scene that was eerily familiar. Another hallway, identical in every aspect to the one they had just explored. The walls, floor, and ceiling were coated with the same thick, congealed blood, dripping in a disturbingly rhythmic manner. The drone's camera panned across the hallway, revealing no immediate differences from the previous floor. It was as if they had never descended at all. However, one of the researchers noticed something subtle yet significant. The symbols on the doors lining the hallway had changed. Where they had previously seen the word Canaan, beneath the cryptic symbols, it now read Bis. The change was minor but significant, adding another layer of mystery to the already unsettling environment. 12:58 p.m. The drone was guided forward through the hallway, its sensors scanning the environment as it moved. Everything about the corridor seemed identical to the previous floor, down to the smallest detail, including the pipe that had burst and spilled sludge-like blood earlier. The resemblance was so uncanny that the researchers began to question whether the elevator had actually descended or if they were trapped in some sort of spatial anomaly. Despite the apparent similarity to the previous floor, RC-7's onboard sensors, geometric, seismic, and air pressure analysis confirmed that the drone had indeed descended to a lower altitude. The data suggested that they had moved deeper into the facility, even though the environment appeared unchanged. 1:03 p.m. Unnerved by the bizarre duplication of the hallway, the research team decided to direct the drone back to the elevator. They hoped to further test the behavior of the facility by attempting to ascend. Upon reaching the elevator, they instructed RC-7 to press the up button. Once again, the elevator refused to respond, the up button remaining inactive despite multiple attempts. With no other option, the researchers directed the drone to press the down button again. The button responded immediately, and the elevator doors slid shut. The drone began its descent once more, the unnerving silence returning to envelop the research team. The team couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere far below, something was waiting for their arrival. The moment RC-7's claw pressed the down button, the elevator began another descent into the unknown. As it traveled further down, the elevator light suddenly flickered and then dimmed out completely, plunging the drone into darkness. The researchers, startled by the sudden loss of light, quickly realized that the illumination within the facility had not been coming from any visible light fixtures. Instead, the light had simply existed, emanating from the very walls themselves. Now, with the lights extinguished, the only source of illumination was the faint glow of the elevator's control panel. 1:10 p.m. The RC's microphone picked up the sound of the elevator doors creaking open, their slow metallic groan reverberating through the ominous silence. With no other choice, the researchers activated the drone's UV headlamp, revealing a new environment beyond the elevator. A large open cavern, its walls slick and pulsating with thick, viscous blood. The sight was both alien and unsettling, the cavern's surfaces adorned with symbols similar to those seen earlier, yet these were periodically carved along the walls, ceiling, and floor. Beneath each symbol was English text, with the word Paliltsil inscribed in a dark, almost oozing script. 1:13 p.m. The drone's wheels struggled to gain traction on the blood-coated ground, its movements slow and deliberate as it maneuvered into the cavern. The researchers instructed RC-7 to perform a full scan of the area. The environment was vast, the cavern walls towering above and stretching into the darkness beyond the reach of the drone's light. As the drone approached one of the cavern walls, it extended its mechanical limb and prodded the surface. Surprisingly, there was far less resistance than anticipated. The wall yielded slightly, as though it were made of some sort of organic material. Intrigued by this discovery, the researchers had the drone prod the wall a few more times, each time feeling the same unsettling give beneath the surface. 1:17 p.m. Without warning, the entire cavern pulsed. The floor, walls, and ceiling seemed to contract and expand in unison, as if the entire space were alive, reacting to the drone's touch. RC-7 barely managed to stabilize itself as the rhythmic drumming, which had been faintly echoing from deeper within the facility, suddenly intensified. The beat was loud and resonant, synchronized with the pulsing of the cavern. The organic walls throbbed in time with the drums, creating a nauseating sensation of being inside a massive living entity. The researchers watched in growing horror as the drone's camera panned back toward the elevator. Where the elevator had once been, There was now only a solid wall of organic material, as if the elevator had never existed. Trapped within this pulsing, blood-soaked cavern, the only option left was to press forward. 1:21 p.m. Activating the stabilization function of RC-7, the researchers guided the drone further into the cavern. The journey was arduous, the ground slick and treacherous, the air thick with an oppressive humidity that made every movement feel like a struggle. The drums continued their relentless beat, growing slightly louder with each passing moment, as though they were drawing the drone deeper into the heart of the anomaly. The cavern seemed to stretch on endlessly, a maze of pulsating walls and blood-slicked floors. The symbols carved into the walls became more frequent, their meaning elusive and unsettling. After what felt like an eternity, the drone reached a fork in the path. Both directions were blocked by a thick organic mucus layer that quivered with each pulse of the cavern. 1:27 p.m. After a brief analysis, the researchers decided to take the left path. They commanded the drone to use its mechanical limb to tear a small hole in the mucus layer, just large enough for it to pass through. As the limb cut through the material, the drumbeat suddenly increased in speed and intensity, the cavern walls shuddering in response. It was as if the very space around them was agitated by their actions, reacting with a growing sense of urgency. The researchers pushed the drone forward, guiding it through the newly made opening. The passage was short, leading to another mucus-covered barrier with a strange symbol carved into it. Below the symbol was more English text, this time reading, Kamazots. The name sent a shiver through the research team, the word evoking a primal sense of fear. 1:32 p.m. With no other choice, the researchers directed RC-7 to cut through the second mucus layer. As the drone breached the barrier, it revealed a large organic chamber, the air thick with the scent of decay and blood. The chamber was pulsating violently with the rhythm of the drums, each beat causing the walls to throb with a sickening force. At the center of the room hung a horrifying sight, a massive anthropomorphic bat creature, its flesh pierced by sinuous strands of organic material that suspended it in mid-air. Its body was grotesquely dismembered, its torso floating in the center of the room, with its limbs and head arranged around it in a macabre display. The creature's eyes were closed, its body still, but there was an undeniable aura of malevolence that filled the room. 1:35 p.m. The sight of the creature triggered an instinctual response of fear within the researchers, as if their very DNA was urging them to flee. The drone, however, continued forward, its camera zooming in to capture every disturbing detail. The creature's skin was leathery and covered in a thin layer of congealed blood, its fangs glistening in the dim light. Suddenly, the feed from RC-7 began to glitch, the image distorting with lines of static. At that moment, one of the creature's eyes snapped open, its gaze locking onto the drone's camera. The eye was bloodshot and filled with a terrible, ancient intelligence. A voice echoed through the drone's audio system, the same voice that had been heard briefly in the elevator but now much clearer. It was a pained, distorted voice, speaking in an ancient tongue, Salvaten, futuros shibo ob. The phrase repeated over and over, each time more desperate and pleading, as if the creature was begging for something, salvation perhaps, or an end to its suffering. The words were a horrifying sound, filled with a mix of anguish and fear that seemed to reverberate through the very bones of the researchers. 1:39 p.m. As the voice continued, the researchers found themselves paralyzed with fear, unable to react or respond. The scenario played out for what felt like an eternity before. Without warning, the drumming stopped. The chamber fell into an absolute ominous silence, the pulsing of the room ceasing as the creature's eye rolled back into its head, as if it were dead. In the deafening silence that followed, the researchers could only watch in horror as a mass of blood began to pool beneath the suspended creature. The blood slowly coalesced into a humanoid shape, forming a grotesque figure that moved with a disturbing fluidity. The blood creature walked toward RC-7, its form shifting and undulating as it approached. 1:42 p.m. The blood creature reached down and picked up the drone, its fluid body wrapping around it like a cocoon. It held the drone up to its face, examining it from different angles, as if it were a child inspecting a new toy. The sight was both mesmerizing and terrifying, the creature's amorphous form constantly shifting and changing. As the blood creature continued to examine the drone, one of the researchers, overwhelmed by the stress of the situation, let out an involuntary whimper. The blood creature immediately froze, its gaze locking onto the drone's camera, and then, without warning, one of the researchers in the control room began to swell with blood. In an instant, his body exploded, spraying the room with a fine mist of blood. 1:44 p.m. The remaining researchers were too shocked and horrified to react. They could only watch in silence as the blood creature continued to study the drone, seemingly unfazed by the carnage it had caused. The creature held the drone for what felt like an eternity, its fluid form shifting and flowing around it. After nearly 12 minutes, the blood creature finally lost interest. It tossed RC-7 to the floor, where the drone was immediately sucked into the organic matter beneath it. The pressure from the floor increased, crushing the drone as it was absorbed into the flesh-like ground. The feed from RC-7 cut out abruptly, the signal lost as the drone was destroyed. This expedition revealed a highly anomalous organic environment within SCP-Y-024, characterized by unnerving silence, rhythmic drumming, and sentient entities with potentially hostile capabilities. The discovery of the anthropomorphic bat creature, identified as Camazots, and the blood creature's lethal response to the researchers' fear suggests that SCP-Y-024 harbors entities capable of interacting with and even affecting personnel remotely. The facility's nature, the meaning of the inscriptions, and the full extent of the threat posed by these entities remain unknown. Further exploration should be approached with extreme caution. Investigation into the meaning behind the symbols and the recurring words is underway, with the current theory being that the words Kanan, Bis, Paliltzil, and Camazots having originated from the Mayan language set, though there are around 30 known Mayan languages and some lost ancient Mayan languages. The best translation we have for now is tenuous at best, but if correct, then Kanan, Bis, and Paliltzil are respectively protect, control, slave, in that order. Camazots appears to plainly be in reference to the Mayan deity or spirit of the same name, and the words spoken by the entity Salvaten, Futuros Shibo Ob, appear to be a distress call, calling for the researchers and potentially the SCP Foundation itself to help the entity be freed from its circumstances. Some theories have placed the anomalous facility's words in opposite order: slave, control, protect, or SCP for short. These theories founded on the idea that something led an alternate reality's SCP Foundation down an alternate, likely horrific path. These are, of course, just theories. Future attempts to emulate the expedition into this enigmatic space within SCP-Y-024 have all failed, regardless of time, location, lunar cycle, or any other attempts to replicate a duplicate scenario to the original expedition. Every day we work toward unveiling the mysteries of the many horrific and sometimes somber anomalies of Provisional Reality-Y-1. Perhaps one day we'll manage to unveil the truth of Camazots, as well as his mysterious and aqueous hangman. This is Director Knightley, signing off on another report at Site Y1. I hope you'll consider subscribing to stay up to date with our findings. I eagerly look forward to having your audience in future reports.